not just for students, I think, as a learning tool, but also for teachers as a teaching aid. Technology gives huge opportunities in helping the teachers use gamification as a teaching method, make use of VR and AR and, such sophisticated tools to just help them teach better. So I think technology is just magnifying the learning opportunities today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. As part of our Impact series, today we have with us Ms. Devanshi Tripathi. She's the director at the BYJU'S Social Initiatives Vertical. Devanshi has done her MBA in rural management and has extensive experience working on ground with the community. She has worked on several government and development projects on themes like poverty alleviation, financial inclusion of women, and skill development of underprivileged youth. Devanshi leads various social initiative projects at BYJU'S, Education for All, the flagship program, under which free of cost BTLA licenses are issued to students from underprivileged sections of the society. She primarily works towards identifying innovative solutions for improving access to learning opportunities for underprivileged students. Having worked in the development sector, she understood the importance of education and specifically EdTech in today's time. Hence, she joined the EdTech unicorns since education is an area that is close to her heart and she believes it is the strongest tool for changing the world. Thank you so much, Devanshi, for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Asta, for the introduction, and I'm glad to be here.
To begin with the interview for today, my first question is, can you please elaborate on your initiative, Education for All, which is a social movement to democratize education in these extraordinarily difficult times of the pandemic?
Yeah, so Education for All is one of the flagship programs at the Social Initiatives Vertical at BYJU'S. Within this program, we target to reach out to 10 million students by 2025 and offer them free of cost BYJU'S app licenses so that they have access to high quality learning content. Basically, we're trying to reach out to students who are not able to afford alternate learning solutions or any kind of online tuitions or coachings. And we are doing this by partnering with NGOs that are already working in the social sector space, and we are reaching out to their beneficiaries. And within the Education for All program, we have multiple archetypes through which we reach out to these students so that, all, like the name suggests, education for all. So all students who whether they have access to a device, whether they do not have access to a device, whether they have internet connectivity or don't have internet connectivity, we can try and cover all of those students within this program.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It sounds like a wonderful initiative by the BYJU'S, and I'm sure this is going to help the students in their future to come. Moving on to a next question, what role do you think technology is playing in revolutionizing the education space? Also, how do you see it helping the ones who cannot afford formal systems like the internet accessibility?
So I think technology is playing a huge role specifically in the education sector, right? Technology has the power to bring education to each student's doorstep, which was earlier absolutely not possible through traditional, learning methods. And technology enables one-on-one interaction. It enables each student to learn at its own pace. So there are several advantages in technology, like EdTech, basically, which the traditional learning methods do not offer. Not just for students, I think, as a learning tool, but also for teachers as a teaching aid. Technology gives huge opportunities in helping the teachers use gamification as a teaching method, make use of VR and AR and, such sophisticated tools to just help them teach better. So I think technology is just magnifying the learning opportunities today. Having said that, there are lots of, like you said, that there are many students who are not able to afford, whether it is in terms of infrastructure, like whether it is devices or in internet connections. So specifically at BYJU'S social initiatives, what we are doing is we are trying to cater to this audience by offering refurbished devices to them. Also, we are trying to subsidize the costs of internet and devices devices, and wherever we feel that there is lack of affordability, we bring in a funding partner. We are also reaching out to them by donating devices to students who have absolutely no access to device, or uh, these days, like even if you have one device present in a household, like let's say even if a student does not have an individual device and they have just one device in the household, then both the siblings can learn on the same device, and we will activate the BYJU'S app license on that device, and both the students, like both the brother sister, or the siblings, can learn on the same device and have access to different classes on the same device, and we'll be able to track on the back end what their progress has been. So that's what we're doing at BYJU'S, by sort of like bridging the gap in multiple ways, whether it is giving an individual device to a student, or offering an in classroom one to many learning mode through an Android box and TV, or just activating an online license if they have access to internet on their own device. So these are the multiple archetypes that we are following at BYJU'S.
That sounds amazing, Devanshi. In fact, during the COVID-19, there were a lot of, flaws in the system that came to the front, and, accordingly, organizations and businesses started molding their initiatives. And it seems like BYJU'S has done the same by addressing the key challenge here of accessibility, be it in terms of the, internet accessibility, or be it in terms of technological accessibility. So you've enabled both for these students. Now, how do you think the pandemic has highlighted the fault lines of the educational infrastructure, along with the need for EdTech solutions to create a thriving remote learning ecosystem?
So I think the pandemic accelerated some of the major shifts that happened in global economies, right? It almost forced us to rethink the traditional learning methods, and it made us realize that it's important to keep changing and keep up with the constantly changing world and adapt with time, right? Um, but of course change is always very difficult, and everyone has their own learning curves, and people did find it difficult to sort of quickly change to online learning methods, and there were a lot of not just students but a lot of teachers also who did not know how to sort of change to a remote learning or an online learning method, and because of that a lot of students did not have any access to learning once the schools were shut down. So I think it really forced us to change in a good way, and develop some student centric learning models, where the focus was more on the student learning, and allowing each student to learn on his or her own pace. It Because obviously some of this is not really possible in traditional learning methods, like in a classroom setting the teachers have to complete the syllabus in a certain period of time. The teachers are not just catering to one student, right? They have to look at every student, and sometimes it is just not possible with the kind of teacher student ratios that we have in our country. So I think some of those major issues were catered to during the pandemic, with technology playing a vital role. And I think like I said, that lots of organizations stepped up, and including BYJU'S, and they helped students and teachers develop certain learning models that helped them in developing a model that was enabling not just within the classrooms but even outside the classrooms, right? So even when the schools started opening up, students still would go back home and revise, or learn through these edtech tools that were offered to them, because they realized the importance of this tool, and they understood that revision is very, very important, and students who could not follow certain things in a classroom setting, they found it extremely useful to come back home and sort of go back and revise those topics and keep up with the pace of the classroom.
So thank you so much for sharing that once again. That gives us a quite good picture into what, the education for all initiatives at BYJU'S mean actually. Moving on to the next question for now. In these times when schools are shut down and, children have to study from home, how has BYJU'S worked on improving the accessibility of children to these digital education solutions offered by you, considering they have limited to no access to technology in their homes?
So I think that's where the Education for All program comes in, right? So in fact, the social initiatives team at BYJU'S was almost like a product of the pandemic. So as soon as the pandemic started, we at BYJU'S took it upon ourselves to ensure that no student does not have access to learning just because they are not able to afford it or because of financial reasons. So when the schools were open, at least students, even from the underprivileged sections of the society, were able to, go to school, and they had access to, a classroom, teacher, learning content. But once the schools were shut down, they did not really have any other alternate source of learning. So that's why we thought, why not, if students can't come to school, why not take learning to their doorstep, and why not offer them learning solutions, whether it is through a tablet, and or whether it is through, let's say, on their own mobile devices. So, like you said, that these students do not have access to internet. So wherever there was accessibility to internet, we offered them online streaming licenses, completely free of cost, on their own devices. And wherever we saw that internet accessibility was an issue, we preloaded the tablets with the BYJU'S content and offered it to them completely free of cost, so that they can learn from the pre-recorded lectures that we have. So that's how we sort of responded to the pandemic. And we established B2B relationships with NGOs that were already working in the social sector, like I've mentioned, and we reached out to their beneficiaries, so that we reach out to the right audience that actually requires these solutions in times when they have no other access to learning. And I think, I've mentioned once before that within Education for All, we try to cover all sorts of students, now whether they have internet, no internet, have access to device, no device. We have various learning archetypes. So it's within a one-to-one learning model, we have a tablet through which we offer offline learning solutions. Then within one-to-one, we also have online learning solutions through which you can access live classes, etc., which will require an internet connection, but it can be activated on your own device, on the student's own device or the parent's device, and the students can learn on their parents. We also have one-to-many learning methods, so that during the pandemic, like, schools were opening and shutting down again and again. So even once the students go back to schools, there is a one-to-many learning method where the teachers can play the app on a television through the help of an Android box, which is again completely offline. So internet connectivity is not required for that, and students can learn through that. So it aided in better learning even within the classrooms. So I think that was what BYJU'S did during the pandemic.
Thanks, Devanshi, for sharing. It sounds amazing how you tried and addressed both the sections of the beneficiaries that you were dealing with here. One with the access, the other without the access, and you had a solution for both. And I'm sure there are various other, such edtech companies who are working on a similar model, or probably there are other like-minded organizations who are working in the similar, sector. Considering there's already an overflow of organizations working in the domain of edtech, what is it that BYJU'S is doing differently to improve the learning outcomes of the children?
So I think one of the primary differences that we have as compared to the other edtech companies is that we focus both on students and teachers through the same product, especially within the social initiatives team. That is what we are trying to do. So it's not most of the edtech solutions will focus either one of those, right? So our app will help a student in learning better also, and will also help a teacher in teaching better. So we also saw that when we were partnering with our NGO partners, there were many organizations that told us that our teachers do not have access to content. They are sort of downloading PDFs from the internet and sharing it on WhatsApp to the students, because they just don't have any other way of teaching them. So I think our app is also a great way for teachers to sort of use audio visual tools to teach better. So it's, while it is helping the students to learn better, go back and revise and learn on their own pace, it's also helping the teachers in teaching better. So I think that is one major difference that we have. And edge over other edtech companies. Also, we have like a two teacher model where one teacher is focusing completely on training and teaching students, and then there is another facilitator or a mentor who is focusing only on doubt resolutions. So mostly, the complete responsibility of teaching and doubt resolution is generally like on one teacher. And a lot of times in such a scenario, doubt resolutions is sort of neglected, because there is obviously a limited time and the teacher has to focus on syllabus completion and so many other things, right? And they cannot like cater to the doubts of all the students. And also student a lot of times is hesitant in asking doubts. So we have completely separate teachers for teaching and doubt resolution, which is a great way of learning, so that students can completely focus on the learning during the teaching sessions, and then they can also like sort of collect their doubts and get back and ask their doubts in the doubts resolution classes at a later stage. I think other than that, one more very important thing I feel is that we are not trying to replace any of the stakeholders or replace the schools or the traditional ways of learning in a classroom. We are just aiding all of this. So whether it is helping students with their current learning methods, whether it is helping teachers with their current teaching methods, or just sort of bringing about better teaching delivery inside a classroom, inside a regular traditional classroom. So we are just aiding that. We're not trying to replace the schools or teachers in any way. So I think that is very, very important to remember, because a lot of edtech tools these days talk about sort of like replacing teachers, and I think that is something which we do not focus on at all. We feel that teachers are very, very important, and we have to somehow aid the current way of learning, and that is the best way to sort of do it and reach out to as many people as possible.
That sounds really amazing, Devanshi, because, given the current scenario, it's definitely important to provide children with that kind of a learning opportunity. But at the same time, if we are equipping the students with that kind of capacity, then we also need to equip the teachers with similar kind of capacity to be able to deliver the results. But, while you've mentioned all these amazing programs and, how you've implemented them, how you came up with the idea of them, I'm sure there must be certain challenges involved during the process. And, so can you enlist the challenges that you have come across as part of your journey into the edtech space? And how do you see the space transforming?
So I think, like you rightly pointed out, of course, there were lots of challenges, and we are still, dealing with new challenges every day, especially because, EdTech is still pretty new, and all of us are still trying to adopt to the new ways of teaching and learning. And, any change is difficult, like I said. So just making people comfortable in adopting some of these new ways of teaching and learning is one of the first challenges that you face, because teachers are so used to teaching in a particular way, students are so used to and so comfortable in learning in a particular way, that it's very difficult for them to imagine anything else. So like, I don't think any of us would have ever imagined that we will not be sitting inside a classroom and with a teacher learning on teaching on a blackboard, and there will be something completely different happening, where students will be sitting in their homes and they will be learning through a virtual classroom. I don't think anyone would have thought about it, or we would have passed it off as a joke if someone would have brought this up maybe 20 years back. But that's how it's happening these days, right? So I think, other than just adoption, specifically, if I talk about the audience that we are catering to within the social initiatives team, I think there are lots of other challenges also, right? So measuring learning outcomes becomes a big challenge for us, because learning outcomes cannot be measured overnight. It cannot be measured over a month or 2 months or 3 months, right? We have to give students enough time to use the tools that we are offering them, and then at least like nothing less than one academic year, but ideally studies say that at least 3 academic years before you can actually do a study and say what was the impact that the edtech tool actually brought about. So I think because of that, it's a lot of times very difficult to say how useful the tool is for the students, and what are some of the challenges that they are facing, and so just like being able to measure some of those learning outcomes and making your products better by understanding what some of the learnings are from those learning outcomes that we get. I think that's another major challenge. Also, some of the social factors, I would say, like for example, a lot of times the environment at home for these students, they are not very conducive to learning, right? So even though the solution that we are offering in terms of like the edtech product, or let's say whatever the environment that we are giving to the student is perfect, and let's say even the student is learning and is intelligent and is grasping everything, but if the environment at home is not conducive, is not enabling for a child, sometimes that also becomes a huge challenge, right? And that is an external factor. So how to sort of cater to that, and with an understanding that that is a given a lot of times in this situation, what can we do better to sort of help the student to still continue learning and still show improvement in learning. So those are some of the main challenges, I think, that we face in the future. In the coming days, I think we can expect faster than anticipated digital adoption. Like I said, that 20 years back, nobody would have imagined that people will be learning through a virtual classroom. So I think now we can sort of say that in the coming years there will be digital first learning, which will be directly integrated into schools and colleges. And if you see, even the NEP talks about deeper tech thrust into mainstream education. And I guess in the future, some of these edtech solutions, some of these sophisticated solutions that we have, like AR, VR, XR, etc., will become more and more cost effective, hence more usable and scalable. So I think that's what the future holds for us.
That sounds amazing. Thank you so much, Devanshi, for sharing that. All of these insights are very interesting. And in fact, the challenges that you talked about, it was quite evident, from what you said, that one, behavioral change is very important, where people have to yet to adapt to such kind of technological advancements happening in the educational front. And secondly, the impact that is supported by evidence, which you said that measuring learning is not very easy. It's a longer process and it takes time to do that. So yeah, I mean, like, with that, I think we come to the end of our interview. Thank you so much for giving us your time for this interview. It's a pleasure to have you, and we hope you continue to do the good work. We wish you all the very best.
Thank you so much, Anika.